Welcome back to the show for business owners, Your First 1,000 Clients. I'm your host, Mitch Russo, and for those of you who are listening for the first time, welcome to the family. I do this because I love to interview amazing people who have cracked the code and built a life for themselves that others model. I do this because I am always looking for the best way I can to give back to the community that has given so much to me. I welcome your feedback and your suggestions about how I can make this show experience better for you. Today, I want to start this show with a question. Have you ever purchased an online course, training program, sales program, or marketing program, but never quite finished it? I know I have. Never quite received the value you thought you would, but wish you had? Well, I have a solution. What happens if I could match you with your perfect accountability partner so you can work together to get that course done? Listeners, I have built the equivalent of Match.com for entrepreneurs to help you do exactly that. Introducing the Results Breakthrough Network. Besides finding a match, the software actually coaches both you and your partner to get the most out of your weekly meetings. As a listener to Your First 1,000 Clients, I want to invite you to try it for free and see if it's a fit for you. Go to resultsbreakthrough.com. Entrepreneurs, it's time to get accountable. That time is now. Today's guest is not just a personal friend, but a rare individual who has done what some think is impossible. He's generated over $160 million in revenue in 70 countries. He's sold personally over $12.5 million, and that's the boring part of the story. You see, listeners, he's done something that has really been achieved in all of human history. That's right. He's found the way to free another human being and resolve lifelong issues plaguing mankind for eons, just as he's freed himself. No, he's not Jesus, Buddha, Moses, or any such religious icon. He just discovered one essential truth about us all, and ever since then, he's been sharing it freely with others. Today, my friends, he's here to share it with us. Welcome, Brian Ridgway, to the show.
Hi, Mitch. Thanks for the welcome. I'm grateful to be on with you.
It's awesome having you, Brian. And as I said in the intro, full disclosure, Brian and I have been friends now for probably about 6 months, and it's just been an incredible experience knowing Brian, and I felt like having him on the show would be such a gift to my listeners that I just couldn't wait to have him. So here he is. And Brian, I'm excited because I know that what you're going to share today is going to change some people's lives, maybe a lot of people's lives, and I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same.
Cool. All right. So what I like to do in the beginning of every intro and every interview is to go back and talk about how you got started, where you came from. How did you discover who you really were and get the kind of success that you did early on?
I love the question. Well, I understand origin stories from different angles, and with the work that I do, as unique as it is, and literally unique, I've never seen anything like it. My origin story has to actually start with super early childhood, though it's still a very short story. The bottom line is that who I became during those first 14, 15 years of life dictated who I was as an entrepreneur. Zig Ziglar, I heard him say this many years ago. He said, you can't be one kind of person and a different kind of salesperson. And I say you can't be one kind of person and a different kind of business person. Because if you look under that entrepreneur hat that you're wearing, guess who's under it? It's the you that came out of that childhood home. So for me, I had a pretty severely abusive childhood, about 17 years of being mentally, physically, and emotionally beaten pretty much every day for 17 years. So when I came out and began in business, I had such low self-esteem. Literally, my inner mantra was what my dad told me a couple thousand times, which was stupid, ugly, worthless piece of blank. And your listeners can fill in the blank. And that was the self-esteem. That was the self-image that I began in business with. Now, I'm in a small group of people, that the huge majority of people that come out with that kind of a self-belief and self-image, they just are never able to crack the code financially. I was able to make pretty much unlimited money. I got into sales and marketing early, and I discovered to my shock and amazement that I was pretty much ninja at both of those. I could just create money in any industry. However, I made a discovery, and that is that when you believe you can't have, shouldn't have, don't deserve, and you actually then find the way to overcome that, you're going to make yourself pay in other ways. So the huge majority of people just can't make enough money. But there's that smaller group of entrepreneurs who can make it, and they find incredibly creative ways of losing it very quickly. I know you help a lot of people, and you've seen that a lot yourself, Mitch.
Absolutely.
So when I got into sales and marketing, I was able to just accelerate constantly, making more money, generating more money in more industries, helping entrepreneurs to see hidden opportunities and hidden assets and really blow through it. However, I made and lost a fortune not once or twice, or even 3 or 4, or even 5 times, but 7 times. I made and lost everything. Now, this is where it gets even, the plot thickens, because over those 15 or 20 years that I was climbing through this, I invested well over $300,000 on every type of self-help, personal development. And I know this is my business origin story, but my business origin story is nothing without looking at what I did to try to make my life work, because again, it was the same person, right? So I spent over $300,000 on every type of self-help, money, business success course, every seminar that came down the pike. Some of them I went to twice because I figured I screwed up the first time when it didn't work for me. You would be hard pressed to name a guru or an expert or a quote healer that I didn't go to and spend money to. And when the standard business stuff didn't work for me, I started opening to more and more of the spiritual stuff, energy, meditation, law of attraction, those types of things. And
so let me ask you a question, Brian.
Yeah.
Because there was a point in time when you started to make money, you started to see things happen, and then you lost it all, or something went wrong. Let's go back to the first time something went wrong. Let's talk about how you felt and what were the signs to you that it wasn't just a happenstance or an accident. I mean, people make bad investments and they go wrong. Doesn't mean they're broken. So how did you figure that part out?
I got to say, it was really a stacking of the 7. However, I did get clues the first time. And so the first time, it was actually more, every time I made a sale, honorably, honestly, and lovingly helping a person say yes, when they said yes, I had a feeling of fear go through me. Like, okay, now I'm about to get hurt. I'm about to get in trouble. And no one explained to me. I found out many years later that children who have been severely abused often carry that fear in any area where they start to succeed or win even slightly. They get a feeling of, okay, here comes the punishment. And so I knew that every time I made a sale, I had this feeling of, oh boy, here comes, I'm about to get my butt kicked. Okay.
How did you know that wasn't normal? Maybe, didn't you think, well, isn't this how most people operate and feel?
It was partially because I lived my life as an interviewer, Mitch, and I was always interviewing my friends. I viewed every sales presentation I ever made as an interview, and I didn't see that feeling being universal in everybody else. Yeah, and I saw my sales managers. They didn't seem scared or upset when they got a yes. And so as my yeses got bigger and bigger, I got into selling $30,000 to $100,000 packages, and I had extremely high closing ratios. And I also had severe fear of rejection issues, which a lot of people, comfort zone, there's other phrases for it. And I had to overcome this massive fear of rejection and call reluctance every single time. It was just this crushing feeling. I was doing cold calls on business owners, and I mean, my car door weighed 10 million pounds, thinking about pushing that thing open and getting out of the car again. So guide me with the questions that are going to help your people the absolute best. The story is so unique probably compared to most of the people that you interview. I can totally relate. You might want to guide me a little further with
Sure. No, there's no problem with that. I mean, ultimately, Brian, I literally sold like you did out of I had accounts that I called on, and I'd drive to the account and I'd get out of the car and trudge through the snow and whatever it took. I mean, I would have to go and close those deals. And I did. And I had feelings about it too. I didn't always like it. It didn't always make me comfortable. I didn't always look forward to it, but I didn't think there was something wrong with me. And so that's the part I was really asking about. Maybe there was something wrong with me, but I didn't know it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I didn't get any clues the first few times. Okay, so now I understand your primary question better. I didn't get any clues that there might be something wrong with me during the first few. It was actually around the fifth time that I lost everything. Because by then, Mitch, I was well into probably $200,000 that I had invested. I was taking all the money, business, and success courses and doing everything they told me. I was going through all the personal development and all the self-help and taking total responsibility and visualizing what I wanted and doing everything that the gurus and leaders and law of attraction experts told me to do, and nothing worked. In fact, the more self-help and personal development that I went through, the worse my life got. That's when I reached the conclusion, I must be just totally screwed. I mean, there must be something so fundamentally flawed in me that even self-help can't help me.
I was going to say, well, it's funny because I think most people have at one time or another done something around self-help or training. I mean, I used to call my car the Rolling University because my trunk was filled with cassette tapes. Somewhere down in the basement, I have boxes filled with cassette tapes, programs that I bought on Nightingale Conant many years ago. But I always felt like those were reinforcing and those were of value, and I would learn from them. But then later, when I was hurting, then I tried self-help as a way of trying to untangle my emotions, maybe the things that I thought were bothering me that weren't solved by just me being able to figure it out. Do you know what I mean?
I literally know, and I got to say, we'll get further into this later in the talk, I'm sure. But so doing what I do today, the huge majority of my audience and clients are people that spent a lot of money on business success and then self-help and then personal development and then spiritual work. And so I couldn't agree more. I think I had the same trunk that you had. The issue was I was noticing, even at an early on, I was noticing that my personal and emotional challenge stuff was very intricately tied into the business challenges. I saw them as almost one thing, and I couldn't separate them. So I would listen to the business go, everything that came out from Nightingale Conant, no kidding, boxes and crates. I would listen, and I would get hope, and I would see this makes sense, and this will work, and this is going to make the difference. And then I would go through that program, and I would be exactly the same I was, only worse, because now I felt I'm so screwed up that I just went through the best training course that's working for everybody else, and I'm still screwed up. Now, what I didn't know was that almost everybody else that went through that course felt the same at the end, too. There was nobody there to tell me that. But yes, I just got more and more depressed, more and more frustrated, and as each disaster, so to speak, I don't view them that way now, they were all miracles, but at that time, the pain of those disasters, I started to really feel that there must be something deeply broken in me for me to have spent that much money on self-help, gone to all the seminars, all the courses, applied those step-by-steps that I was given one after another, and still my life was a train wreck. I started to lose hope, actually.
Interesting. And so here you are at this point. You felt like you've lost hope. Where do you go? What do you do? I mean, what's your life like at that point?
Well, that was around when I had lost everything the fourth, fifth times. And I did the only thing, I had two options. I could kill myself, and I considered it many times. And it's interesting again, Mitch, I've worked now with 70,000+ people in 83 countries. And I have heard so many people come back to me and say, Brian, I felt exactly the same way. Didn't have it quite as bad as you did, Brian. This is actually so common and people don't talk about it. Well, I had two choices. I could end my life and give up, or I could buy the next damn self-help program that looked even better and brighter and said that it would go further. So that's what I did. My book is called Break Your Self-Help Addiction. And it was kind of humorous and it's kind of not, because when your life is not working, when your business is not working, when your marriage, your relationships are not working, when your health's not working, when anything like that's not working, and you've bought the courses and done the programs and it's still not working, well, you're still alive and you're still around when the next shiny object comes along that holds the promise that this will be the one that works. And if it looks like it addresses what those other things didn't, you invest again. And that's exactly what I did. I just got further. So I moved from what most people would call the practical self-help and business trainings into more and more spiritual, more and more advanced things that I used to call woo-woo. But desperation will put an end to skepticism very quickly. And so I opened up to meditation and belief elimination and spirituality and bringing more energetic concepts in until I realized, wow, this is actually the most pragmatic thing that we can do. And more people are waking up to that. Now, for me, that led to me realizing that I was 100% absolutely unquestionably responsible for everything that was happening in my life, which actually created for me even more pain. Because when I fully realized, if I looked back and saw all those times that the money was taken from me or companies I brought millions in business to, they went under, or I could look at that and say, well, that wasn't my responsibility. But when I realized I literally was creating my own life, utterly, totally, and completely creating my own life, and I took full responsibility. Yes, I am doing this, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know where the switch was to flip to make it work. And by then, I had pretty much tried everything that self-help and personal development had to offer. Visualization, all of it. And then that's when the seventh time I lost everything. I literally, if I didn't have kids, I can promise you I would have jumped off a bridge. I couldn't put a gun in my mouth because I'd lost everything. I couldn't afford a gun. But I would have jumped off a bridge. And if it weren't for my kids loving me and me loving them, I would not be in a body right now. And that was the seventh time. And that culminated around 45 years of age. And I just barely hung on. And I went for about a year. And I made this commitment. When I lost everything for the seventh time, I looked in the mirror and I said, I don't know how to make this not happen again. And until I do, I am not going to make another penny. So they took the Mercedes, they took the house, they took everything. I put on a pair of tennis shoes and a pair of shorts and I started walking. And for months, I basically meditated with one question in my mind. How is this me? How is this me? How did I create this? And it led to, in 2011, this just earth-changing, life-shaking miracle that changed absolutely everything for me. And that was the kind of the turnaround moment.
Let me see if we can step back a little bit and unpack what you just said. So it took a lot of effort to go through all these business courses, and you got what you did out of them, but you still felt the same way. Then you moved from business courses to self-help. And again, you went through all of those, and I'm sure you followed them to the letter. And still no true relief and no outward success showing up either in that regard. And then finally, from there, you moved into the spiritual realm and healers and probably people who would do things in the spiritual world to affect you. And none of that worked either, from what I'm hearing. And now you are at this point in your life where it's the final tragedy, if you will. You lost everything for the seventh time. And this feeling got to be so overwhelming of really the only thing keeping me here is my kids. And of course, that's a great reason. Glad you stayed. But I mean, that's pretty dramatic. And I think listeners may not be able to identify per se with the story of what they did, but they will identify with those feelings because I think we've all had them at one point or another. So here you are, you're wandering around in your shorts and your flip-flops, and hope you were in a warm place at that point in time.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So there's a point I want to add to what you just said, and that is that the spiritual work and all the quantum physics that I studied, I mean, to contemplate and factor in to your question that $300,000 was no chump change. I was getting into incredibly advanced information. And although I had been a professional musician many years earlier, I quit listening to music to live in automobile university, like you were saying. And so it was a 10, 20 hour a day pursuit for me. I spent probably 10, 15 years listening to self-help, personal development, and spiritual programs while I slept every single night. And so I cannot say, this is what's so ironic to add the special sauce to your question. I was waking up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychically, some would say, and developing these incredible insights. It's just that my physical life was still a train wreck. And that was so confusing and frustrating for me. And so to really summarize that last phase, I had generated over $160 million at that time. I had done about 11 million in sales at that time. I had spent over 300,000 on personal development, self-help, spirituality, seminars, shamans, everything. And when I lost it all the seventh time and I ended up homeless, hopeless, suicidal, stuck, and just literally desperate and suicidal, that was where at the lowest possible point, I had no way out. I had no hope whatsoever. I was stranded in a city that I did not want to be in with no way out. I had exhausted everything I could imagine. And at the lowest possible point, I had what can only be called a miracle. And I don't use that word hesitatingly at all. A profound awakening, and all of the quantum physics and all the spiritual stuff that I had ever learned. I went from the idea that everything is energy. You know, lots of people are talking about that these days. But I went from the idea of it to the instantaneous experience of it. I went from the idea that anything is possible, infinite possibilities, into the instantaneous experience of it. In a second, I went from living for 46 years in a hell on earth into a heaven on earth experience. That was followed a few minutes later by a phone call where I was picked up to take over marketing for a company that I was very impressed with. And 8 days later, I was on an all expense paid cruise in the Caribbean. Like, the miraculous turnaround is just beyond the beyond the beyond. The funniest part about it is the ship that I was on the cruise. The name of the ship is The Miracle. And I mean, I have photo evidence. I couldn't make this thing up. It's just too incredible. And so that was the turnaround, January 3rd, 2011, about 10:30 in the morning.
Wow. So I guess we'd call that the gift of despair. I mean, the deepest despair possible. And clearly it was your gift. I mean, for those listeners who've been listening for a while, I was in an alcoholic marriage at one point, and you probably know this if you heard me tell the story before, but I had a wife that was alcoholic, and I was going to Al-Anon meetings. And I remember finally, after trying everything I could to get her to stop drinking, and my life being as miserable as it was, and me almost basically losing my company, as a result of the emotional strain of this and trying to keep a 7-year-old safe in that same environment. For me, what ended up happening is I got to Al-Anon and they said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I have no place else to go. I mean, at this point, I tried everything and nothing works and I don't know what to do." And they said, "Well, that's how we all got here, so welcome." And so you got to that spot. I mean, you got to a worse place than I did because I wasn't suicidal. That was about the only thing I wasn't, but I wasn't suicidal. And so this switch flipped for you. And I think anyone who's listening to this would say, well, okay, Brian, that's great. It's flipped for you. But do I have to get to that same place for it to flip for me?
Beautiful. And the answer is absolutely maybe. Almost never is almost never required. And we can talk more about this. Just for the shortest answer to that question, I work with people around the world who are at everywhere on the continuum. I work with people in their 20s who are just really stepping into entrepreneurism, haven't really hit the glass ceilings yet. And I'm able to help them to break free very, very early in their phase. And I work with people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who had tried everything and were pretty much given up. I'm able to help them. There doesn't seem to be any requirement for that level of hell. That appears to be something that I chose in order to be able to really help at the highest possible levels. When I look back, it appears I was being groomed to do what I'm here doing.
Yeah, I hear you. And again, it's funny how that happens, how every single thing that we experience in life leads to a moment when all of a sudden, as miserable as that experience was, it brought you to the place that you couldn't have gotten to any other way.
Exactly.
So let's move forward here and get into a little bit now of what you do. So I have heard the word spell breaker associated with you. I have never seen so many testimonials on YouTube for a person in my life. I think you may have as many as Tony Robbins, but I'm not sure. help me understand what it is that you do and why everybody is so verbal about the results that you seem to get for people. What is it that you do?
So to answer this, I'm going to go back to when I was 3 years old. When I say I was being groomed, I mean that in the most literal sense. So when I was 3 years old, I noticed that it happened constantly actually for me. I would look at a person. So my parents would have friends over at the house, or we were over at their house, and I would hear someone speak for a few seconds, and I could see and hear and feel the pain inside of them and understand with a vocabulary that I had no way of developing by 3. I knew exactly how to help them see how they were holding themselves back and to tell them how they could look at it differently and actually break free of those thought chains. And so I did that from 3 years on. While my life was going into train wreck territory, I was always able to help the people around me to break loose. And so that was something that added even more pain to that story that I just told. All right. Well, when I had my breakthrough, just a few months after the breakthrough in 2011, I got inspired. This gift that I have, that's what I'm on the planet to do. So ever since then, I've been doing it. After a couple years, one of my clients said, dude, you just broke my biggest spell. And the word spell breaker stuck. And so what spell breaking is, here's what I do. The reality is that you are an infinite, unlimited, perfect, complete being of energy disguised as a human. Now, it's interesting. I'm not the only one talking about this. So far, though, I'm the only person I've seen who's literally able to help anybody that wants it to step into that reality. I'm sure there's others. I've just been looking for 30 plus years and haven't found them yet. So I help people through spell breaking to step into being the infinite, unlimited, perfect, complete energy being that they are by dissolving whatever is in between where they are now and their infinite, totally powerful truth. That's the essence. It's generally done through communication. I've worked with groups, large and small, thousands, hundreds, tens across the planet. I've spoken in many countries around the world, worked with small groups. I've done dozens of online programs, and I also sometimes do one-on-one work where I help a person dissolve one or more of their deepest life issues. And what's really interesting about this is people come to me with things that they've been working on for years or decades. They've literally tried everything, and in less than an hour, it doesn't matter what the issue is, I can help them dissolve it and have it be a total non-issue. Something that's really freaky is that very often when I'm working with someone on a life issue, their cancer disappears or scoliosis, things that absolutely impossible. And I know you've seen some of those testimonials. You have your own experience with me, Mitch, and you've also seen a lot of those testimonials. I'm doing a video session with somebody remotely, and I'm talking with them about their health issue, and somebody messages me later, Brian, I watched that video and the cancer growths on my body disappeared within the 3 hours after watching your video. What's going on? That stuff blows my mind as much as it blows everybody else. I have a couple in Belgium that I had never met. They watched me work with someone else on a live video, and her multiple sclerosis left her body while she was watching.
Well, those are some amazing claims, Brian. And this is a business show for entrepreneurs. And here we are talking about stuff that normally I never talk about on the show. But the reason that I wanted you to be here today with me, and the reason I wanted people to hear you, is because I think what we're really talking about here is removing blocks that have been holding us back. And since we're all in business and we're all entrepreneurs, all we do all day long is work on our business. I mean, I know that's what I do, and probably more than I should, but the bottom line is that we work on our businesses because we love what we do. But if there's invisible impediment that is standing in the way of total success, then that freedom is required. I got to get that if I can be the success that I know I can be. And listen, I mean, I've been successful. I've been a failure. I've been both. I know what it's like. And there are times when you just don't understand what happens. Like all of a sudden things are going great and then boom, who knows, a car runs into you and wrecks your vehicle. I mean, what is that? How does that work? And so these are the internal things that we don't understand that somehow you do. So let's get mechanical about this. So we have people listening to the show. What could they do right now to get closer to understanding this for themselves?
Beautiful. Wow. What a great question. Okay. So let me draw a string from the last thing I said to this. So how could it be? And I'm going to encourage everybody listening right now, just start to breathe deeply and really tune in and relax. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to take my word for anything. Just be open and curious. How could it be that I can be talking with someone about their business and their scoliosis leaves? How could that happen? There's a clue there. There's actually a clue. And that is that you are not a business person. I literally teach with my more advanced clients that there's literally no such thing as business. It's a made up idea. You're the same little boy or little girl that was riding your bicycle with a Superman, Superwoman, Supergirl cape on, riding down the hill going, whoa, when you were 4 years old, wanting to play and explore and have a blast in this miraculous universe and planet that you find yourself in. However, you got put into an educational system, and that educational system has components of religious, governmental, medical, all the systems and established institutions of energy that teach how life is, of course, none of which is true. And you had to buy it. You had to invest. So what did you invest? Think about that phrase. We say, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Well, every one of us as children, we bought all of that stuff that they taught us. And what did we buy it with? With our infinite creative capacity and our belief. And so ever since then, we've been struggling to measure up, to do it right, to be a success and not a failure. And as long as we're doing that, we're missing the fact that we're infinite, unlimited beings in a world of infinite possibilities with infinite opportunity to have a blast creating whatever the heck we want to create in our lives. And so the first thing to do is to become present enough to begin to feel, oh, me. I don't have to be working 12 hours right now on this project to force it into completion. I actually, oh yeah, I know what I can do. Come back to presence first, Mitch. That's what can they do? That's the very first thing they can do. They can come back to presence. And the best way to do that is to look away from the computer and the phone for a moment and breathe. Maybe look out a window. Oh yeah, air, water, dirt, sun. Oh yeah, that life I was living that was fun and joyful before I learned all these rules about business and money and success and failure. And when you find that you can actually play and be present and generate more money, having more fun with more people without the stress, that's the call. That's the call.
Okay.
Yeah. Point us in the right direction there.
Sure. I totally get that. I guess the thing is, though, is that, we are raised as kids to live in a world of adults and we're children. So we, of course, assume that what we're being taught is right and true. And so we, as you say, we adopt it blindly so that we can fit in as we grow up. And then all this stuff about being free, these are things, Brian, that I've heard a million times. What makes what you do different, though? How can you telling me to be free and to be present be different than Deepak Chopra or anybody else telling me the same thing? Why are you different? And what do you do that's different that I don't understand from so far?
Beautiful. Now, that is the biggest question. So for me to start answering that, you better be ready to rein me in, Mitch. So here's the thing. I am living in a state of unconditional love. And each and every person that comes into my presence, hearing my voice, you feel whatever you feel. Listener, my new friend, Mitch, you've experienced what I do, and it is entirely possible that you're chiming in on that at some point. Could be one of the most helpful things for the listener. I leave that up to you. I am living in unconditional love. And when I look at you, Mitch, when I look at the person who sits in front of me, when I talk to the person on the phone that's in front of me, I don't see any of their beliefs about what's wrong with them. I don't see any of what they've bought into about themselves, their family, their religion, their money, their business, their success. I see an infinite, unlimited being energy in front of me that's perfect and flawless with infinite potential. That's all I see. And so first and foremost, the person in front of me feels that on whatever level of awareness and presence they're ready for, they feel, wow, there's something really weird here. People who aren't ready instantaneously dislike me without knowing why, and they just run. And the people who do want more freedom, they say, wow, what the hell is this? Like, this is amazing. So that's step one. That's the first thing that's different about me. The second thing is I fearlessly, uncompromisingly, unflinchingly, and unhesitatingly speak that truth of love and infinite potential to that person if they're open and willing to hear it. If they're not, I just have a chilled conversation with them. But when someone comes to me ready for help, I reflect to them their infinite perfection. And when they speak to me any of their paradigms or beliefs about their problems, their challenges, etc., I say, and if they've hired me, I don't have to ask the question. They haven't hired me. I say, so would you like to have some help with that? Mm-hmm. And when they say yes, I reflect back to them through my being and verbally the perspective of infinite possibilities, of infinite perfect energy with no limitation. And it's so interesting, by helping a person to see what they consider to be a problem from the perspective that they see it from. When I help them see it from infinite possibilities, it basically it goes from being implicit and hidden from them to being explicit and very obvious, and suddenly they find themselves completely free of the entire issue. It's a huge oversimplification, but that is the essence of what I do.
Okay, and now I want to again explain that a little bit of what I've heard. So step one is to get present, and you have a very beautiful, simple way of helping people get present. And that's simply to breathe. And so, listeners, whenever I work with Brian one-on-one, he encourages me to breathe through my nose, out my mouth, continuously, without forcing it, without rushing, without slowing down. Just breathe. That does, and I will testify to this, it does bring one into presence, because you're focusing on your breath. And if you continue to focus on your breath, then for some strange reason, not much else is important when you're focusing on your breath. So presence is a physical act that Brian takes his clients through. Step two is speaking through this thing that you called infinite love. And I want to rephrase it a little bit, because the key to what you said came a few seconds before you used those words. Here it is. You said you don't know the struggles or the problems or the success or the failures of the person you're talking to. All you see is a person. Well, I think what you're asking us to do is to maybe look at ourselves the same way. What would happen if we just looked at ourselves as just a person without the stories connected to the name Mitch or Brian, whatever name you have, whatever story you've had that you've connected those two together? In that moment, and just for now, what would happen if you looked at yourself that way? So now I'm unpacking a little bit of what you said earlier and seeing it in a more, if you don't mind, a more procedural way, okay, to get to that point. So then the final last step here is what I would call a little bit, maybe that's the magic. It's the ability to read another's energy, whatever you want to call it, another person, to read them and guide them to the place where their maybe greatest pain that is ready to be exposed sits, and show it to them, so that you're turning the unconscious into the conscious. And maybe is that possibly how this works, how it seems to eliminate problems in people's lives? Because I'm just trying to, in my engineering mind, unpack this in a procedural way. Does that make sense to you?
It makes total sense. Now, I'm going to add a little fuel on that fire, and then we can take yet another step of dismantling, reverse engineering this. So what I find, Mitch, is, so I know that this language is a little bit woo-woo for some. And again, I make no apologies. When I finally made the discovery that what most people call woo-woo is actually the most practical, pragmatic, the truth is the answer. The truth is what makes us free, not all the illusions that we hold. I don't care how dearly we hold them. So I'm okay with other people choosing to be offended or turned off or skeptical. That's wonderful. I'm working with the people that actually want freedom, is what it boils down to. All right. So when we speak, we can only speak from one of two places. We can speak from presence of our infinite, unlimited selves, or we can speak from other than that. And when I say other than that, it's our language and behaviors and beliefs and rules and values and all the programming we received. That's the only two places we can think from. It's the only two places we can act from. It's the only two places that we can speak at all from. So what I was doing from 3 years of age without knowing it and having no idea how that happened, sometimes you take a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you sit them in front of a piano and they start to play the song they were playing in their last body, so to speak, right? Apparently that's the case for me. So I was doing this at 3. I actually hear when you, whoever it is in front of me, is speaking from your infinite being, or when you're speaking from your rules and beliefs and programming, which is all utterly false. And for someone who is open to and desiring to come from their infinite, unlimited being, I'm very quickly able to help them to shift over to their infinite, unlimited being. That's the piece. That's that feeling that comes in, Mitch, when we start a session. I'm helping you to step right back into your infinite, unlimited being, and you feel the difference. It's not ethereal. It is ultra intense and clear, right? So that's what I'm pointing to that. Now, then in the conversation, I might repeat back to you something you said from your non-infinite, and I do it in such a way that helps your infinite being see it and say, wait a minute, that's BS. So yeah, I'm helping you to move back into the perspective of the witness, the infinite, unlimited being that we keep learning and hearing that we are, and then to view your, quote, perceived problem that when you're in your limited being seems like everything to you. But when you're in that witness position and you view it, it moves from the implicit to the explicit. It loses all power and you literally transcend it, never to experience it again.
Well, Brian, I will tell you that, and I'm telling you too, listeners, what Brian is saying may sound crazy, but I have experienced it, and I have experienced what you just described, Brian, that moment in time when what felt like an insurmountable problem pretty much went away. And that's why I wanted to have you here, because, so there's really 2 questions I have for you. The first question is, can you tell me again the name of your book?
Yeah, it's Break Your Self-Help Addiction.
Okay, so I read that book on an airplane. Brian, I think you offer it for free, actually.
Yep.
And where can people get it for free?
It's for free at breakyourselfhelpaddiction.com, along with several free videos that support it and help you to actually live it.
So I downloaded this book to my Kindle, and I love my Kindle, and I'm on the plane reading, and I'm reading this book, and I get to a certain section of the book, and I laughed out loud. The people next to me looked over to see what was going on. I don't know if they thought I had a funny video on or something. So there was a moment in time when, and I wish I could remember exactly what it was that you said, but when I read that thing and I laughed out loud, it was a realization to me that this was truth, that there was something here that was really true that I hadn't quite heard that way before. So the first thing I would tell you listeners is get a hold of that book. It is absolutely free. Read the book, and if it resonates with you, step 2, in my opinion, is to go on YouTube. Now, Brian has, I don't know how many of these Spellbreaker sessions, but you got to have at least 100 of them. Is that true, Brian?
Oh, at least 100.
So you don't need to buy anything from Brian to experience what his clients or his friends, in a sense, because they're not even clients. There are people who claim to go on YouTube and watch his videos and shed some of these issues that they've had all their lives. So I would encourage you to start there, and then from there, see how you feel about maybe subscribing to Brian's newsletter or other things that he offers. But here's the thing, and this is like the most important thing. This is something that was unavailable to me just 6 months or 9 months ago. And I have looked just like others have, just like you listeners have, at so many different options and choices for self-help and for spiritual healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just an option. Look at it, see if it resonates with you. And it's part of why I wanted Brian on this show, because if it can unblock us as entrepreneurs and allow us to achieve our goals and help more people, which is what most of us are about, then why not? And that's what you're here to do today, Brian. And I think so far you've done a pretty good job, I got to tell you. But I have a couple of quick questions for you.
Okay.
So this is a question that I love to use to show me a little bit more about who I'm talking to is, and to help my listeners understand you better. So here's the question. Who in all of space and time would you like to have 1 hour to enjoy a walk in the park, a quick lunch, or an intense conversation with?
Well, this will be the most radical answer probably of all the questions you've asked. At this point in my life, there's no one left. I literally, some people call this channeling. All right. And I understand how weird the answer is, and that's okay. I'm weird. I accepted that years ago. I am basically channeling because I don't know anything anymore. I'm open to infinite, unlimited truth. And so anything that I ever wonder, the answer literally flows right into me. I don't have any more questions. I don't have any more needs. I don't have any more stress in my life. And so I'm done with needing that. I have everything available to me. I'm loving every second, every minute of life. I would welcome that hour with anyone, and I don't prefer or desire an hour with anyone anymore. The answers come to me whenever I ask.
Okay. Well, there you go, listeners. The answer is no one, and that's a first.
I knew it would be.
Yeah, that's a first. We've gotten several answers before, but not no one. Anyway, thank you for that answer. And here's the grand finale, the question that I think is maybe the most important to all of us listening, and it's about what I think of as the most important thing you do. It's called the Change the World question. So what is it that you are doing or would like to do that truly has the potential to literally change the world?
Beautiful question. What I do is I unqualifiedly, unquestionably, and limitlessly, unconditionally love every person on this planet, whether I meet them or not. And, there are companies in the world that some people vilify. There's a couple big companies that want to take over the food supply of the planet. There are a couple companies that want to take over water and just completely own it all. And there's a lot of marches against. There's a lot of movements against. And I don't subscribe to any of them. I love them too. I figure everybody on this planet, when I look at some of the things I did in my life, Mitch, that I'm neither proud of nor ashamed of. I just look back at what I did that I would never do again, and I realized that in that moment, I was doing the best I could to survive. I was doing the best I could to live. I was doing the best I could to get by and stay safe when I was confused, troubled by emotions and things I didn't understand and couldn't find help to. So I have completely forgiven myself. And when I look at anybody and everybody else, no matter what they do, here's what I think. If I was born to the people they were born to, if I was raised the way they were raised, if I learned what they learned, and if I knew to be true what they know to be true, and I found myself in that situation, I would have done what they did. So I carry no judgment, no blame, no fault. I just love everybody, and I see that change in the world because I see people who were sure that they didn't like me, who thought I was weird, who later come around and I'm able to actually help them, and they kind of join me in this unconditional love that I'm doing. So that would be my answer. Unconditionally loving everybody I see and meet.
So Brian, basically you are the CEO of Love Fest International. That's your new title.
Amen. I'm all over it.
Okay, my friend. Well, listen, this was an unbelievable conversation. I really, really appreciate your time today, and I encourage listeners to go check this crazy man out. You never know. It could actually be kind of fun and cool. So check it out. Brian, thank you. I can't wait until we get a chance to talk again.
Thanks, Mitch. I enjoyed it, and thanks, everybody, for listening.
If you've ever struggled with completing training programs you purchased, finishing courses, or with your own business goals, you're going to love what I'm about to share with you. I have built a system where you can find your perfect accountability partner, just like Match.com, but for entrepreneurs. In fact, it not only matches you, but guides you through live accountability sessions with carefully crafted questions, which you select for yourself. And it includes exclusive membership in a private Facebook group that holds weekly masterclasses to help you grow. For listeners of my show, I want you to experience it for free. All you have to do is go to resultsbreakthrough.com and enter your event code, WINNER, WINNER, all caps, and you will get unlimited access free for 30 days. If you love it, then continue at a very low cost. So go ahead and try it for yourself and see why every great teacher from Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, and Daniel Pink have all recommended getting an accountability partner. Try it now for free. You've been listening to Your First 1,000 Clients with your host, Mitch Russo. Go to www.yourfirst1000clients.com for a free guide on how to get 1,000 of your own clients. And if you like this episode, please go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review.